So hello and welcome to Relocate Guru, the app to help you feel like a local no matter where you move to. And today we're being joined with April, who is an educational consultant living in Zurich that helps families who are relocating with kids, especially with special needs, to help navigate the school system. And with 20 years experience as a special needs teacher, she's got a mission to make this whole process a lot easier for families. So thank you so much, April, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Nicole.
So today we're going to share some tips about how to move with kids, which will be beneficial if you've got kids with special needs, but also any kids, to help make that transition a bit easier. So I hope you enjoy our conversation today. So tell us a bit more, April, about what is an educational consultant and why families should get in touch if they are moving with kids internationally.
Sure. In my 20 years of teaching experience, I've worked with many different educational consultants, and their role really is to help parents navigate the school system when they need some extra support on the outside. Sometimes parents just need someone to speak to that isn't their teacher or the administrator at the school, just to talk through what's going on at school. And so after this 20 years of teaching, I've seen a lot of families struggle when they move from one school to the next and they have a child with special needs. So I see my role as the person that helps the families find the right school for their child, accumulate all the right documents and information from past schools, so the new schools can say, yes, we have the right environment for this child, or that we need to keep looking for another school. I also help families when they have meetings coming up and they need some help figuring out what to say during the meeting or questions to ask. And my role really is to help those families as they're dealing with all the changes that come along with moving schools when you have a child with special needs.
That's fantastic. Really important to sort of figure out sort of like the choosing a school after knowing where you move to. Like, I know for me personally, picking a school is the biggest stress for me.
Yeah.
Like even about going to finding a house. So it's like, because once I've got the school, then I find the house near that school.
Absolutely. I had a family recently that I helped move, and they said, we would like to look in these 3 areas, but they weren't going to start looking for a house until that school was selected. So sometimes it's the very first contact with an educational consultant sometimes happens even before you talk to the real estate agent.
Exactly. And in the UK, like, navigating the school system, it can be challenging because you have, for the state system, you've got school catchment areas, but you can't apply to that school until you have an address in that school catchment area.
Yes. Yeah, it's a catch-22, isn't it?
So it's completely catch-22. So you might not even know if the school is suitable. And then even if you do get a property within that catchment area, which in some parts, especially in London, can be like 2 or 3 streets because the school is so overpopulated, it's like you might still not get in if there isn't space. And you end up like renting a property in near this great school that you wanted, and end up having to go to a school miles away because
sounds very familiar to the US, and here in Switzerland, you're not even allowed to go visit the public schools until you have the address.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's a real leap of faith in the public school system, but having someone that can help talk you through what are the systems, especially if you're moving to a completely new country, that can be very comforting as well.
Definitely. And I think having someone who's got that experience of those different school systems would definitely make life a lot easier for a lot of people, but they don't know that there was such a thing even exists.
Yeah.
So I hope now you guys can see sort of like there's people out there that can help you. And as well as April here and consultants, there's loads of Facebook groups and things where mums are very helpful at sharing information about schools.
Absolutely. That would be one of the first things I would say to go do, is try to find those mom Facebook groups and ask some questions.
Exactly.
Mm,
And yeah, you sometimes need to take those with a pinch of salt because everybody has different experiences depending on their kids. So
absolutely.
it's trying to gather as much information as possible.
Agreed. Mhm.
So what are your first, so say you've got the call like to say that you're moving to a new country, what are kind of the tips that we need to do to help prepare our kids, especially those with special needs, for
Sure.
that move?
In this blog post that I've written for you, I've got some 10 tips that I've shared. And of course, I'm thinking about children with special needs when I write these tips, but most of these would apply to all children and helping them make a smooth transition. One of the first ones I would suggest is thinking about giving your child enough time to process that move. You know your child best. Some children, take for instance, one of the boys I talk about in the blog post, his parents told him 6 months early, and he's on the autism spectrum. So for him, that was a very black and white time. So we're moving, which means I'm done with school, I'm done with friends. So in his situation, it would have been better to let him know just a little bit in advance so he could say goodbye properly to his friends, to his favorite places, even in the community. Um, but then on the other hand, there are families that let their children know just a couple of days before the move because they think it will be the best. They truly believe that this is going to be the best for their child, but it is better for kids to be able to say goodbye to those friends that they've worked so hard to make during their time. And there's a man that was named David Pollock, and he talked about having 4 different steps in that goodbye process. And he talks about them as making a raft. And there'll be a link in the blog that you can check that out. But letting your children make a raft so they can carry them through from their one location to the next location. I think it's a really nice visual.
I think that is a great thing to keep in mind is that my husband grew up in the military, so he was moving every year or two. But he would literally come home from school one day, the house would be packed up, and we'd be told he was moving the next day.
Wow.
Like there was no time to process it. And like his parents thought that that was the best way to deal with it for them.
Yep.
Um, but I know that's had a detrimental impact on my husband in his adult life.
Yeah, I'm sure. And
Um,
the thing is that we have to remember too as parents, we're going to make mistakes. That's just part of being a parent. And I know that everyone is trying to do their very best, but sometimes it's nice to hear some different ideas of how you can try to make that transition a little bit better. So one of the other ideas that I have had a couple of students that absolutely loved using Google Earth to kind of walk through their new neighborhood, see where the great new parks were going to be, kind of start at their new residency and walk through the streets to the park so they could kind of see what that was going to look like before they arrived. And I think that's a great way to help kids visually see where they're going to be, because oftentimes when kids have special needs, they really struggle to make a picture in their mind of something that's abstract at the moment. So giving them something that's more concrete, a real picture, making a photo book of if the parents are there on their own during a house hunting trip, can be a real comfort to be able to look through something like that prior to the arrival.
I think that's such a good idea. Is that when I was told I was moving up to Scotland when I was a teenager, like we were literally shown a point on the map which looked like it was the middle, like the end of the earth.
Yeah.
Like, we're in this little point on the edge of Scotland, hundreds of miles from civilization. That's kind of how it
And
felt.
that's what the picture you start to create in your mind, right? And so to have some other pictures that are not a point on a map, and to really be able to cement something like that in your brain. Having pictures of the school. I think it's even helpful if it's possible with all of our privacy rules. Sometimes to be able to get some pictures of the teachers, of the secretary that'll be sitting at the front desk every day when your child walks by, to know those names, to have some pictures with the name written underneath, so that it's not such a surprise and not such a shock to the system on those first few weeks of school.
Definitely. And lots of schools here give kids the opportunity, like especially when they're starting school, to have kind of like intro days,
Yeah.
where they get to play with their classmates, like the week before school starts, things like that, or join in with sports day, so that they can kind of get a feel for the school and kind of meet teachers on a more relaxed basis.
Yes. Yeah, and in that situation, I have many students with high anxiety that may turn that into a very negative experience, because they're really anxious about the first day. And my advice in that situation would be, when you're speaking to your children about their visiting day, is to talk to them about it in terms of a rose and a thorn. So the rose being the positive part of the day, what was the great part of the day, and the thorn being one negative during the day. So it doesn't turn into a negative conversation about the day, because this is where they will be going to school. So choose one positive, the rose, and one negative, the thorn, and then move the conversation on to something else, so it doesn't become a repetitive anxiety building conversation.
Yeah. And I suppose it's like looking forward to that constant positive thing that could be happening in their routine.
Yes. So then that kind of leads to the next idea, would be to have a schedule on the wall that your children can see those really important days that are coming up. You know, when is the flight? Or when are you leaving in the car? When are the movers coming? When is the going away party? When is the first day of school or the visiting day of school? So there's a real visual that accompanies the countdown to that process. You know, for me, I think of this in terms of toilet paper for myself. For some reason, I think, when is the last carton of toilet paper have to be purchased? I think this will be the last one I buy before we move, or this will be the last bottle of shampoo I buy before we move. And in kids do that too.
Say champagne, it's like that.
It's too hard to count sometimes, Nicole. But then also you can attach to that a paper chain, which is super common in primary school, but it's also a real visual to count down how many days are left until. So what I would do is I would make a calendar, not so much in a box like this, but a linear calendar. So how many days until the movers come, and then I would make 20 paper, how many ever days it is. So there's multiple things that are being counted down at the same time, and then your children can see exactly when this is going to happen and where that's going to happen.
And we do this with advent calendars for Christmas.
Exactly. It's the same idea.
So it's the same idea. It's like
so if you want to put little chocolates in there, go ahead too.
But yeah, it's getting them excited rather than about and well, it's not even excited versus the positive versus negative. It's just like keeping them in the loop.
Right. And that's another suggestion as well, is that there is going to be positive and negative emotions that come along with this. And I find it's really helpful as a parent to talk out loud what emotions you're feeling at that moment, and let your children see your emotions and say what's happening in your head. So one example was when we were moving the last time, we got a phone call 3 days before we were going that our cat couldn't go with us because she didn't have the right shots.
Oh, no.
So I was really nervous about that. And so I'm on the phone and I hung up, and of course my daughter could tell I was upset. And she asked, and I told her what was happening. But then in addition to just telling her what was happening, I named the emotions I was feeling and how those were making me feel about being scared about having to leave the cat potentially, or that now I'm a bit nervous because I have to call someone else to try to help through this situation. But I think putting a name to your emotions and letting your children know that it's okay that you're feeling the same emotions that your child is probably feeling as well, but they might not be able to name them at the moment.
I think that's really important, because as parents, sometimes we get the feeling like, oh, we have to be the strong ones
Exactly.
and
And
put
hide.
on this like Mary Poppins filter on everything.
Right.
And it's like we're processing stuff as well.
Yeah. And letting your children know that it's okay to have those positive and negative emotions, because that's a natural process. And putting a silver lining on everything is not reality.
Exactly. And also, it's almost detrimental to ourselves as well if we do put that silver lining, rose tinted glasses on everything, because then that denies us to kind of process things
Exactly.
healthily as well.
Right.
So it's also teaching our kids sort of like how to build resilience, and
Right.
how to um, that having a range of emotions is okay, and it's all going to be okay in the end.
Yes.
And it's like, just because you have a negative emotion isn't going to, like, for one day or 1 hour or whatever, isn't
Right.
going to impact the whole move.
Right. Like your kids sometimes, they'll be having such a great day and then one bad thing will happen and they say, that just ruined the whole day. The whole day was bad now. But modeling for them that something bad did happen. Here's how I'm going to try to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And then showing them that, okay, I've moved on from that bad event.
And and now I'm looking forward to the good event that's going to be happening tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what should parents do sort of like when they are like going through the move and sort of like looking at schools? Like, what is there any tips of like what to look for?
Sure. I think the biggest tip I can give right away is to have a real picture of your child before going to look at schools. And the reason I say that is because it's not really possible to know exactly what happens every single day of your child's school day. So what I advise is that parents have a bit of a questionnaire that they send to their kids' teachers, say their classroom teacher, a teacher that teaches something like PE or music, as well as maybe an extra therapist that they work with, and ask some really pointed questions about what kind of strategies work well in the classroom for your child, and a few other questions that I like to recommend. And then once that information is compiled, that information can be given to the school when they're looking for a school. So then it's early on in the conversation where the school can say, yes, we have services that we can provide for your child's needs, or no, they can't. And I also see my role as an educational consultant to help the parents go through that process of being rejected from a school. And I like to tell parents that it's okay to be rejected from a school, because it's worse if they accept your child and they don't have the proper services for your child. So it doesn't feel good in the moment. I completely understand that. But in the end, it's the best for your child, because you will end up finding a good school for your child.
Exactly, because you might have heard through the forums or the Facebook groups, and like you've done your research on league tables and all the rest of it, that this particular one school is the school for your kid, and then you get rejected, or you don't you can't get in for whatever reason,
Right.
and that could sort of like be crushing, because you're like, oh well, then what do we do now?
Right. And I think the point is that there are good teachers in every single school. Just like wherever you move, there are good people everywhere that we move. You just have to find them and make it a good experience as well. So when we go with a positive notion that we will find the right school, and understand it can be a process. It may not just be the very first school that you have on your list. It may be a process to find the right school.
Exactly. So is there any like final tip that you'd like to share? Any
Yeah,
like
the
take?
last fun tip is to help your child make a sensory kit before going on your trip. And I know we always talk about our kids taking their favorite stuffy or lovey with them on the plane, or keeping those kinds of things out of the packed materials. But one thing that I've always done with my daughter, we used to drive from Seattle to Wisconsin, which is a 3 days of 12 hours driving. And it was just
Ooh.
two of us. So she would get to choose a few activities to do in the car. But I would always keep a few activities in my purse that were just those novel things to pull out if something wasn't right, if she was not having a good day, if something was too loud or too overwhelming, then all of a sudden there would be something new there to captivate her attention. So my suggestion is always to have a few little things up your sleeve to pull out at the last minute, to make sure that you can get through one of those difficult experiences.
I think that's a really useful tip, especially with small kids on a long flight.
Yes.
Those you have to have like your mum bag with like some sneaky little tricks.
Absolutely.
For sure. So where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Sure. I have my website at www.remfreyeducationalconsulting.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Remfrey Educational Consulting, and I'm on Twitter at Remfrey April. And I post weekly blogs that I write. I write one week an educational topic, and then the next week a cultural topic from the point of view of an expat. So I'm having a lot of fun writing and enjoying connecting with people on these common experiences.
Definitely. And it's so funny, sort of like, it doesn't matter where you move to, we all seem to be going through like similar emotions, similar frustrations, and different challenges, and positives as well. So it's good to like see that we've definitely got a lot more in common than we have differences, no matter where you come from or where you're going to. We're all in the same boat, and everyone's here to help support each other. And that's what I want with Relocate Guru and on the app, is to be that place to help support each other and help people sort of feel at home kind of almost before you get there, by sharing local tips and insights, and like, oh, I found this great blog post, or this is something really awesome in my town that I didn't know about, and just being that kind of collection pot where we can kind of connect and find each other a little bit easier and make moving a lot smoother than it currently is.
Yes.
So April will be joining the Relocate Guru app, so you'll be able to find her there, and she'll be sharing some of her tips and blogs on there as well, so you can collect them and save them in your Relocate Guru guidebooks, and so that you can read them later. So thank you everyone for watching, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you next time, and I hope you find your move a lot easier wherever you're going, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And join our community to feel at home anywhere.